Back by popular demand, I have returned to talk about a game that about 8 people played. Hear ye, hear ye! Do you like it? I got it from medieval times. You can trust my opinion about these things. Would a novice own this? That's what I thought. Lucinda Green's Equestrian Challenge is the unsung hero of the horse games world. IGN gave it a 6.6, which is astronomically high for a game of this caliber, and that's higher than what they gave City Skylines 2, so they must know what they're talking about. It's completely devoid of hoof picking, there's no stall cleaning, and it's actually fun to play. I know, the bar is very low. Equestrian Challenge followed in the footsteps of Mary King's Riding Star and Equestriad 2001, with the developers IR Gurus setting out to make another age and gender-neutral horse game. If horse games have a small audience, the talent pool of people making them is even smaller. IR Gurus co-founders Craig Loughton and Andrew Neer invented the horse game, essentially, saying the inspiration for Riding Star came when Lawton's sister wasn't able to go to Pony Club because it was cancelled due to the rain. Which is a very Australian sentence, I will add. If things got cancelled because of the rain in England, we wouldn't go anywhere, which would probably be for the best. Craig Loughton then went on to found Go Gallop Studios with Jeff Sinclair, who had helped ingratiate Loughton and Neer in the equestrian world back during the development of Riding Star. Go Gallop Studios then released the mobile game Equestriad World Tour in 2020. Blue Tongue Entertainment and Tantalus Interactive also worked on Riding Star and Equestriad, and then Tantalus went on to make Mary-Kate and Ashley Win a Circle and Pony Friends 1 and 2, which I have not played, which probably is surprising for someone that owns something like this. I'm sure I'm the target demographic for Pony Friends 1 and 2. The IR Gurus back catalogue is comprised of a lot of niche hobby/sports games, so it's not surprising that they were pretty good at making horse games. They clearly understood that you shouldn't compromise on quality just because your audience is used to being fed the absolute worst games ever existed. Equestrian Challenge understands that people buying a game about riding horses want to ride horses, so everything is streamlined in order to get you out there on the courses as much as possible. Is it a perfect game? Obviously not, but for a horse game where the standard is, does your expression change from anything other than just a blank, vacant stare? I think it deserves a bit more love, and I think it works as a case study as to how these games can still have some kind of heart and soul, even if the financial backing isn't there. Premise. In Equestrian Challenge, your goal is to progress from 2-star to 4-star eventing with the help of eventing whiz Lucinda Green. Lucinda is also the commentator on both of the Equestriad games, so I just assume she's a gamer. There's no story other than your burning desire to be champion of champions and to leave everyone cowering in your wake. For each competition level, you need to train at your home base before you can go out and compete in the real events. The game was able to get the licenses for Adelaide, Badminton, Burghley, and the Kentucky Horse Trials, and the courses are reminiscent of the real-life locations with recognisable jumps and layouts, if you're the kind of loser that pays attention to that sort of thing. Me. I'm that loser. I'm the loser that knows about that kind of thing. I will say it's weird that they only go up to 4-star level when in real life these courses are 5-star. I don't know if that was done to protect the reputation of the real life names that they used that you compete against so that their feelings don't get hurt that they're getting beaten by kids. Character and horse creation. As expected, the game is without the usual girl game trimmings. In an interview with IGN, the lead developer, Justin Halliday, talked about deliberately avoiding the frou-frou. He says, "From the outset, we wanted to steer away from the predictable Barbie game. This isn't a pink game, it isn't cutesy, and doesn't solely aim for children or women. It's for anyone with an interest in the sport, as it has been for our past equestrian games." Equestrian with a capital E. Put some respect on that name. This more egalitarian outlook is reflected in the character creation menu, as you're able to actually play as a man. You're some kind of freak. The later Lexus Numerique games do have more diverse characters, but they're mostly voiced by white actors. With that in mind, you can probably guess what this character sounds like. Oof indeed. I was looking on the voice actor's website, and she uses a clip from a BBC documentary about rats as an advertisement for her voice. I just thought that the clip that she chose to use it's kind of funny.
The rat mammal from the rodent family. Character, intelligent, sexually obsessed, colonizer.
The horse customization is quite limited, mostly 50 Shades of Bay. Small things like being able to change the horse's height or add quarter marks if you're into that kind of thing, add a bit more depth to the horse creation. The horse models are quite simple, but I think they're very sweet. And they fit the style of the game, and I like their little happy ears, and they have sweet expressions. The hooves are very small though. That's my only real complaint about this game. The horse's hooves are just so tiny, they're so dainty. They also don't give any of the coat colours any names, so that helps avoid the usual paint, piebald, pinto mix-ups that you get, especially when these games are localised for different areas. I made a beautiful bay mare called Big Booty Judy, and she's the best. Your horses have 5 abilities: speed, jumping, stamina, trust, and agility. They're pretty self-explanatory. After each successful training course or event, you're able to assign points into these categories. You can choose between 3 breeds: thoroughbred, warm blood thoroughbred cross, or Irish sport horse, if you're not like the other girls. I really like the concept of the development points, and I wish more games would implement that instead of just a standard training level, but the development points are given out so generously that it becomes really easy to just max out your horse on all the stats and you don't have to be that picky. I wanted my sweet, sweet mare, Big Booty Judy, to be strong and reliable. Her haunches were designed for jumping, but her eyes, they reflected a kind and trusting soul. But at a certain point, it became easier just to put points in everything, so it wasn't long before Big Booty Judy became a dressage aficionado. Horse care and training. Horse care is a part of this game, but it feels like it was included out of necessity, and they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Feeding and watering your horse consists of them running over to a hay bale and a water trough at the back of the paddock. You can brush and pat them by moving the cursor over the body until the relevant gauges are filled. There's no stall cleaning, there's no hoof picking. It only takes a couple of minutes to get all this done. It's not particularly fun, but it's preferable to what most other horse games do. Gameplay and events. The events are, you guessed it, dressage, cross-country, show jumping. Dressage is a rhythm game where you watch from a TV camera perspective as you ride through the various shapes. The harder difficulty level you pick, the faster the little song goes. Each test does involve a lot of trotting in circles. Your focus is always on the bottom of the screen, looking for the next button combination that's going to come up, so that kind of limits what you're able to focus on. I'm going to be bad and talk about show jumping next. You don't have an endurance bar in this event, so you don't need to monitor your stamina at all, which is a blessing. The horse is quite nimble and the steering feels okay. Your horse actually turns its head when it moves, which is nice. When I got to the 4-star level, Big Booty Judy had just become too powerful, and she only wanted to run at every fence as fast as she could. We had to resort to trotting round corners to gain control. She was just too strong for her own good. I'd created a monster. Now, cross-country is what this game is all about. The entire event shows that, yet again, the developers understood that people playing a video game maybe want to actually have fun. The event starts with a flyover shot of the course set to dramatic music. The camera sweeps through the trees and twists and turns. This is such a small detail, but it adds so much to the entire event. It makes it feel sprawling and realistic, and not just show jumping with logs or whatever every other game turns cross-country into. This time you do have a stamina bar, but it can recover whilst your horse is still cantering, so you don't have to grind your momentum to a halt to be able to finish the course in a good time. You also have hearts above your stamina bar that are dependent on how high your trust level with your horse is. Each half heart will allow your horse to gallop even faster for a short burst of time. Think horse nitrous. Once you get to the 3-star level, you're pretty much galloping at full speed the whole time. Like, look at this. Isn't that fun? Aren't you having fun watching this? It's really fun to play. The courses are laid out realistically with long gallops between the fences. and then there will be multiple routes through each combination. So you can take the easy route if your approach is a little bit funky, or you can risk it and try and find your line and just blast through the jumps diagonally. Because you're almost always galloping at full speed, riding the courses is actually quite challenging, especially at the 4-star level, and it makes you feel like a pro when you're able to thread the needle and not have to slow down into a canter. You still need to press the spacebar to jump, but for the cross-country, it's much more forgiving about you approaching on a diagonal. For me, I think the cross-country training course at your home base is the most fun. It makes absolutely no sense in real life. It's so twisty and turny. I don't know how anyone would feasibly be able to ride something like this. Other horse games paint cross-country as just being jumping outside over logs or whatever, but it's an incredibly dangerous sport that kills people all the time. Although there is unfortunately no risk of death in this game, it is actually fun, and it encourages you to be more risky, and the camera movement makes you kind of get into it. Why it's good. In that same interview with IGN, Justin Halliday basically spells out the secret formula for making a horse game. When talking about working with a limited budget, he explains, it just means you have to prioritize a little bit. We decided we should definitely motion capture the different gallops, trots, and canters and hand animate other movements. This pragmatic view means that we get small details, like the player character looking where the next jump is, her ponytail will bounce if you play as the female character. In the cross-country, they'll be wearing a watch so that, they can check their time while they're riding the course. These small details, which probably took no time and no effort whatsoever, just add so much more authenticity to the game, and they make it feel like more of a lived-in real world. Another high point for every discipline is that you're able to watch a replay after you finish the event. For cross-country especially, the replay option makes you feel like a badass, getting to watch yourself crest a hill, or zoom round a corner, or splash into the water. And being able to take artful screenshots of your horse should be the #1 priority on any horse game developer to-do list. Part of liking horses is liking to look at horses. Yeah, the spectators are 2D families of identical twins that married identical twins and then also had identical twins, but they're placed much more thoughtfully under trees, and they're clustered around jumps where real spectators would stand during these events. Even the barriers on the cross-country course feel like they were placed intentionally, and when they narrow together, they make you feel the speed that you're traveling at. Again, it's these tiny details that probably didn't really cost that much to do, but there's thought behind them. Another criticism I have, I know I said I only had one, but I actually have two, is that you can't fall off. You should be able to fall off. Falling off in horse games is part of the fun, especially in the cross-country, because you are tearing through that course. And the refusal animation is very laid back. The velocity that you're traveling at, your little character should just be catapulted into the stratosphere. Why it's bad. Ultimately, the downsides of this game are the downsides of every horse game. 1, questionable horse and rider animation. 2, challenge level. And 3, desire to play. As mentioned in the IGN interview, you can tell that getting the horse's animation right was an important part of selling the game as a whole. Unfortunately, anything less than perfect alienates a lot of the horsey crowd, because it's just so clear when the horse isn't moving correctly. The canter during the cross-country and show jumping looks great. I don't know why they changed it for the dressage. The horse just looks crazy. Why is she doing that? Playing on hard mode definitely does increase the difficulty, but the game allows for so many mistakes that it's still not really that much of a challenge. There was one point where I had 6 refusals on the cross-country course and I came second, and that kind of ruins the excitement of trying to cut some corners or take a risk when you know that even if that risk doesn't pay off, you're still going to win anyway, so there's no point in being cautious. In regards to replayability, you can complete the whole game in about 5 hours. Thoughts? Could I call them horse thoughts? I'm sorry. I often think about what it might take for a horse game to cross into the mainstream. Mainstream, get it? Mainstream? and why they haven't been embraced, ironically, the same way that a lot of simulation games have, like golf games, hunting games, trucking games, farming games. Even if those games don't have household recognition, they still appeal to the normies in some fashion and people who don't already have an innate interest in those topics. And the studios making those games have respect for their audience. I think to say that it's sexism is kind of a boring answer, but I think it's sexism. There are a handful of mixed-gendered sports, but with horse riding, the genders are judged equally, and there's never really been much of a social impediment to women competing, unlike many other mixed-gendered sports that are still male-dominated, therefore women are less inclined to take part. Horse games occupy a weird space where they are considered girl games by their largely female audience, but as players we find the overt gendering to be off-putting. Obviously there is an inherent disdain towards anything associated with female interests, let's say, because everyone knows only girls like animals, duh. Think of any game you had fun playing when you were a little girl, and you can find reviews and playthroughs from super cool guys talking about how terrible this game is and how embarrassing it is, and oh my god, who would ever want this? Not me, I would never play this, he says, filming himself playing it. The takeaway being that girls play bad games because girls like bad games. There's no deeper understanding that these games are bad because there's no money behind them. And there's no money behind them because the audience isn't respected enough to be given a quality product. The irony being that horse riding and otherwise non-horse games is usually well received by the audience. And even if people aren't trying to make best friends with their horse and they're there for transportation, they still want to take care of them and upgrade their skills and give them cool outfits. All those things are not too distant from what horse games are doing and why horse girls are playing horse games. Hence why Red Dead Redemption 2 is a horse game, and why it has been reclaimed so aggressively as a horse game. Horse games have kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by marketing themselves so aggressively to little girls, because it both alienates the player base and it sets the precedent that every horse game is going to be like that, so we should just avoid them. Would the average gamer's interest transfer over to a 100% horse-focused game? Maybe not, but I think there's more interest in the subject matter than the general public gets credit for, and that interest relies on the overall quality of the game, not just the subject matter. I'd be interested to know how many people who are now die-hard farming sim players started playing it ironically and now they're experts in crop cycling or whatever. I've played golf games, trucking games, hunting games, farming games. Yes, because I do have an inherent interest in simulation games, but the games themselves have enough going on to interest the average player who has no idea what they're doing, and they're fun enough that you can kind of make it up as you go along. Out of every horse game, I think Equestrian Challenge comes closest to achieving that. Like, tell me this isn't fun. Watch this and tell me that you're not having fun. Look at that. Look at the cornering, the camera angles, the cinematography of it. Look at it all. Zooming around the corners. It's so fun. It's really fun to play. Is it an incredible game? No. Is it a good game? I could argue that the cross-country is a very good aspect of an okay game. In the aforementioned positive IGN review, their takeaway was, Lucinda Green's Equestrian Challenge is a far more professional effort than most of the other horse-related games out there. And I think that's kind of the highest praise you can give it. But compared to every other horse game out there, this game is like a 11 million out of 10. I don't know how I started this video talking about how amazing this game is, and by the end of it I'm saying, it's fine, it's fine. Meeting adjourned. Look at you. Oh, a star.